and welcome to episode number 108 of the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast, presented by Fox PHL The Gambler, 102.5 FM, 1480 AM, iHeartRadio, and wherever you stream your podcasts. This is Jason Finelli, the esports and gaming insider for Fox PHL The Gambler, and we have a gigantic episode for you this week. Two fantastic interviews coming up for you. First, the commissioner of the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, the MEAC, speaks to me about their esports push, as well as the appearance of Madden at their recent football media day, followed by the CEO of FloWater, the company that provided all of those water machines to EVO 22 this past weekend, talking about the environmental impact they hope to make and perhaps their future in esports and video game events as well. And we will wrap everything up with a recap of that EVO 22 event, all of the big fighting game news that came out from that, as well as the winners of the tournaments. But before we do any of that, let's get right into the 6 in 60 seconds. The Los Angeles Thieves are the 2022 Call of Duty League champions, defeating the Atlanta FaZe 5-2 in the grand finals over the weekend. 100 Thieves defeat Sentinels in the Valorant Champions Tour Last Chance qualifiers, effectively ending the Sentinels season. The Overwatch League returns this weekend with Week 1 of Western Conference Summer Showdown qualifiers, while your Philadelphia Fusion and the Eastern Conference begin next week. Elsewhere, Epic Games has confirmed a long-rumored collaboration between Fortnite and Dragon Ball, which is scheduled to begin on August 16th. Fall Guys and Sonic the Hedgehog have reunited for a new limited-time event, adding a special challenge and 4 new costumes to the game. And finally, after seeing an indefinite delay a few weeks ago, Multiverse's first season of content will now begin just 1 week behind schedule on August 15th, with Morty from Rick and Morty joining August 23rd. Those are your 6 in 60 seconds. All right, our first interview today on this episode of Cheesesteaks and Controllers is definitely one we have not done anything like before. The Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference has really been in the forefront of collegiate esports, recently highlighting a Madden tournament during their football media day. The conference's big football media day, and they're playing Madden just as much as they're doing real football stuff on the field. And joining me now to talk about that and all of their big esports push is the commissioner, the big cheese of the MEAC. We have Sonja Stills here with us. Sonja, how are you today?
I am great, Jason.
First question for you today. Esports are becoming more prevalent on college campuses across the country, but the MEAC seems to be like leading the charge right at the forefront here. What made you want to be in that in the front of that movement?
Well, when we delved into esports, it was starting out with in the midst of the COVID. Mm-hmm. We didn't have sports. We canceled all of our sports. And so we wanted a way to, as another revenue generation for our institutions. And so, but it evolved. We weren't making any money. So we switched up, but we met with the presidents and chancellors, and they wanted esports to be a conference initiative, okay, so that it would reach not only the gaming side, but the educational side.
Sure. Okay.
And so from there, we put together a esports community that has members from each of the participating institutions serve on the committee. And that's how it kind of grown from there. Cool. So eventually, like the goal would be to be a varsity esports conference.
Awesome. Now, the football media day, using that as part of your push into esports, big deal, because college football, obviously one of the most popular sports in the entire country. So how did the idea for that come about? Were there players from the teams approaching you, or was it maybe vice versa?
No, actually, it was the brainchild from Cecily Tafoya, who's my assistant commissioner for external affairs. And she was like, you know what a great idea would be, let's do an esports lounge for the student athletes. And then from there, it turned into, let's make it a Madden tournament.
There you go.
So the student athletes absolutely loved it. This is our second year of doing it. And it's funny that these are the football student athletes who are actually playing, but the winners reflected how our conference championships ended up being, with Howard winning and Morgan State coming in second, which is consistent with our fall and our spring, which is so
really,
isn't that kind of weird?
That's bizarre. That is
so that is amazing in itself.
Did the teams create themselves?
No, so all we did was have the student athletes play
normal teams.
Yeah, so for football, when we bring in for media day, you bring in one offensive player and one defensive player.
Okay.
So and those are the teams for each institution. So it's really random, isn't it?
Yeah. Interesting. That's so cool. And the fact that it ended up as the MEAC did at the end of the season last year, that's, I don't know, man. It made me investigate that or something. That's a little weird, but you mentioned Howard University. Howard is clearly the leader in the conference when it comes to esports. Yes. Multiple championships in multiple games this past spring. What do you attribute as some of the factors to that success? Like what is it that they're doing that makes them so good?
So I have to give kudos to Dr. Deborah Johnson, Deborah Johnson. She's a faculty athletic representative for the conference athletic side, but as esports, I think she's an interim dean for physical education or recreation on the campus. Okay. And so she has been the driving force of putting it together, and it's a student-led initiative. So the students are the main ones. I can't remember, the gentleman's name is Jalen. I can't remember Jalen's last name. Student who really put the initiative together to bring people together, and it's grassroots from the students.
That's awesome.
And that buy-in. So that's how they're able to move. They've been tremendously successful, and they are going to be doing some great things moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the results from your your conference esports tournaments, and then I see that they're into a more national league, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Definitely seems like they might become one of the top programs in the entire country just based on where they were real quick. But before we get to that, I do want to mention that this was the first ever event that was streamed on Twitch by the MEAC, your own MEAC esports Twitch stream. I'm curious how you plan to utilize that platform going forward. Obviously, this is a very good jumping point, but what is now next? What kind of plans do you have in store for Twitch streaming as a conference, let alone team by team?
So it's interesting. We started streaming probably last year, but more of getting the students used to, how we're streaming it and that type of thing. So we would do, like the community gaming, game nights, and, kind of just getting everybody used to it and to the page. So when we did it this year full on with the tournament, that's a tremendous step for us.
Cool.
If you think about where we were 2 years ago to where we are now, it's amazing that we're able to put on a full production like we have this past season.
Yeah, and continuing to use the platform will only make the productions get better and better. I personally feel that way as well. I don't stream all that often, but like what I looked like when I was streaming 2 years ago versus right now is a world of difference. So I completely understand where you're coming from there. I'm looking forward to more of it. I believe I followed it. If I haven't already, I will.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I support you guys.
I hope you do. And here's the other thing with that's broadcasting and streaming is that part of the conference initiative is having that educational component. So it was student driven, the production, as we look to build the esports community, is giving that real-time experience to the students to do what they can do and be that pipeline to, the gaming industry in various capacities. So we are very pleased that our presidents and chancellors have bought into esports not only on just having the physical teams, but the educational component of the degrees and the classes, so that we can continue to build that pipeline.
That's true. That goes a long way to have the support, not only, like you said, of the conference, but of the schools within it. If the schools don't want to be a part of it, it doesn't go anywhere. And I hadn't actually thought of maybe like a broadcasting school or a communication school using this as a platform to get experience. Even if they don't broadcast in gaming specifically, they're still learning what a broadcast is. Right. I didn't even think of that angle there. That's awesome. Man, it just gets better the more I hear about it. But kind of into the participation thing, I know that most of the MEAC is involved in the NACE Star League, which is a national collegiate esports competition. What does a national esports league like that look like to you? Is the Star League going to be the blueprint, or could we see esports eventually get to something as big as the NCAA with different divisions and leagues and things like that?
So we just actually talked about this with the other commissioners meeting that we had, Division I commissioners, and we see the need to create that type of structure for institutions, because there isn't one consistent structure overall. So you have various teams or schools with different organizations, but kind of bringing it all under one umbrella to ensure that our teams are participating with legitimate organizations.
Okay. Yep.
And that they're not using our student athletes and not on student athletes, but our students in a non-conducive way.
Sure.
And that they're getting the money that they need. But also the program. It's something that's going to help improve the overall programs for our institutions. So I see in the future, as it's going to probably look more like the NCAA structure.
Okay.
Based on, and it may be everybody all in one pot,
sure,
but still having the same consistent bylaws and rules and regulations across the whole, country.
Would you think that the current NCAA would ever be interested in getting involved if you were ever to make enough noise? Or do you think that they want to stick to quote unquote real sports?
The way the landscape is right now, they should focus on the sports.
Correct. That we Sonja gets it. She gets it. She understands. She totally understands.
It will. I think eventually it may have its place.
Yeah.
I think the more organized that esports begins to be across the institutions, the more that the NCAA is going to look like, hey, we should pick this up. Mm-hmm. We're not ready for that yet. Sure. But, with the transformation that's going on with, Division I, II, and III, and the cases out there that kind of dictate why we're transforming right now, that's the main focus right now, instead of adding something like esports. I know they talked about it initially and they weren't interested, but right now their main focus should be on the stability of the institutions, the membership, and where the NCAA is going to be strategic in the future.
That's fair. That makes perfect sense. But I would hope that they would consider esports to be part of their. Obviously, it's not going to overtake things like football and basketball. They will always be huge. But I do think that there is definitely a space for esports in the NCAA umbrella eventually. But yes, as you said, they have bigger fish to fry at the moment. My last question to you, easy one. So obviously, in your experience with this, you have watched a lot of esports. Is there a favorite game you like to watch? Is there a game where every time someone's playing it, you're like, oh, I need to watch this?
I like Smash Brothers.
Yes!
It's funny is this when we had our first we had because each school didn't have a team, we put like a Cool Runnings team together and but then okay, we just need to have a representative of MEAC in this event.
Sure.
And how proud I was of our teams competing, because we didn't have coaches. They're just hodgepodge we just put together. And then they were kicking their ass. I mean, kicking butt. Sorry.
I think you can get away with that.
Okay, thank you. But and it's just so exciting. You're like, oh, well, really into it. So I love Smash Brothers, and I think probably my second thing would be Rocket League.
That's fun too.
Yeah, I'm trying to navigate and get my skill set up in that. So yeah. But Smash Brothers, definitely.
Well, if you like Smash Brothers, there's a new one up and coming. I don't know if the MEAC has investigated yet, called Multiverses. We could talk about that off air if you like. It's essentially Smash Brothers, but instead of Nintendo and video game characters, it's characters from Warner Brothers. So Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, Batman, Superman. Yep. Not to shill, but GameSpot.com, the current review, I wrote that. Go check that out. But so make sure you have that on your list too. And in fact, I have a couple of, we'll talk after the show. But and actually, that's it. That's actually my last question for you. So Sonja Stills, thank you so much for your time today. Looking forward to everything MEAC Esports does in the future. And hopefully the next time we talk, we're talking about a more national esports that you're in charge of, as opposed to just the MEAC. But Sonja, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It was fun. Very fun.
Coming up after the break, you may have heard about those water machines coming to EVO 2022. We speak to the CEO of the company that made them about getting into EVO and the environmental impact he hopes to make. Stick around. Yes, folks, welcome back to Cheesesteaks and Controllers, episode number 108. A big thank you once again to the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference Commissioner, Sonja Stills, for the first interview of the show. Fantastic stuff there. Seeing Madden at a football media day, absolutely incredible. I hope more college conferences take that into consideration. But we are moving right along now to our second interview of the show. This past weekend was EVO. Last week's episode was dedicated entirely to it. And one of the big things, one of the big side storylines going in was the addition of water. Now that sounds silly, but a company called FloWater donated multiple water machines so that attendees could get free tap water converted into nice clean water, free of plastics and all that other stuff, just by bringing their own water bottles. And to talk about that initiative is the CEO of FloWater, Rich Razgaitis, joining me here now. Rich, how are you today?
Doing great, Jason. Thanks for having me on your show.
Happy to have you. Now, first and foremost, let's talk a little bit about your FloWater machines. Where did this idea come about, other than the fact that, tap water can sometimes have some things in there you don't want to put in your body? And what does your machine do to clean that water and make it more drinkable?
Sure. Well, I'll answer that question in two parts. So one is just the objective of the company is really based on water equality. And it's based on this fundamental premise that every single person deserves access to clean drinking water that they can trust. And it's just a fundamental human right. And even if we look at first world countries and fully developed countries, no longer can people adequately trust what's coming out of the tap. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We can dig into that later if you're interested, but there's microplastics, pharmaceuticals, herbicides, pesticides, chromium-6, fluoride, chlorine. Some of them are necessary ingredients that you don't want in your drinking water, but it's necessary for the delivery system. Others, like Roundup, have no intended purpose for your drinking water, and it's a byproduct of simply herbicidal usage in agricultural crops that has now crept into our water supply. So the bottom line on this from a consumer perspective is that 70% of Americans no longer trust or like the taste of what's coming out of tap water, and has created what is effectively a brand new environmental cigarette over the last 30 years, 40 years, which is single-use plastic bottles of water. And so our company, and there's a team of 50 of us in the US, and then we've recently merged with another team in Sweden called FloWater that shares almost an identical name and a very similar, almost identical mission and vision. That's 3,000 miles, 5,000 miles away from us, where there's 50 people over there, but there's about 100 people that are just fully committed to this mission of not only providing water equality, but also putting an end to single-use plastic water bottles. Now, kind of fast forwarding to your second part of your question, which is, what is a FloWater refill station? Well, FloWater refill station is really the magic of what ends up transforming tap water into something that consumers prefer over their favorite bottled water brand.
Okay.
And so, when you look at where we deploy these, we put them in hotels, schools, gyms, corporations, municipalities, fire departments, police stations, manufacturing and warehouses, and then also a ton of events. So EVO was the first time that we've done a gaming event, and I personally was beyond tanked for that, and not because I'm a gamer. I would be probably a little bit more if I didn't have such a full day job and just kind of complete raising two teenage daughters, but which kind of puts a dent in one's extracurricular activities, right?
As a father of two daughters myself, I completely understand.
Oh, what are their ages?
6 and 3, so I'm on the opposite end of that spectrum.
Oh, you've got like 8 to 10 years of just joy and bliss, followed by a little bit of bumpiness and some heartbreak moments, but it's great all the way through. So
I'm glad to hear that.
But the reality is, I was really tanked on our opportunity to go into EVO because this shows that there's such a mass market for this transformation that's happening right now. It used to be 10 years ago, just as an example, I used to send an article to all the employees in the company, and at the time it was just a few of us, but then over time it grew. And even in 2013, 2014, 2015, I'd send an article whenever there was one on microplastics in the ocean and the environment, and it was like every 90 days. Well, now if you just look in your Facebook feed or your Twitter feed or your even IG memes and posts and news stories, it's like every 90 minutes there's a story about microplastics and umbilical cords, microplastics crossing the blood-brain barrier, microplastics and the estrogen recepting effects of microplastics and what that's doing to human health. And so, we could go on and on about that, but what's great about this is there's now mainstream awareness, not only of the destructive effects of single-use plastic water bottles, but there's almost this tobacco cigarette-like retaliation around it as well. And, in the 60s and 70s, smoking cigarettes was really, really cool. And now it's not very cool. And so, that's not a vilification of people that smoke. And I have empathy for people that have gotten hooked on cigarettes, but, people are now closet smokers rather than public smokers, and seeing it as kind of a cool thing to do. Same thing goes with, a bottle of Fiji. It used to be really cool to walk around with a bottle of Fiji. And now it looks like you're just crapping on the environment when you're walking around with a bottle of Fiji. And a lot of people are embarrassed to do so. And it's because you are crapping on the environment when you're walking around with a single-use plastic water bottle. And the way that FloWater works is a FloWater refill station takes any potable water, completely transforms that by removing all of the herbicides, pesticides, heavy metals, chlorine, microplastics. So it does this rapid purification that is super pristine water that's left over, and then it enhances it, increased electrolytes, calcium, magnesium, potassium, and sodium, alkalinity, oxygenation for mouthfeel, and then it runs it through this super clean coconut carbon filter that gives the water a really fresh, clean, crisp taste. And out comes, out of any water line via a FloWater refill station, amazing tasting tap water. And that's the way to get people off of bottled water. And so, I don't look at people that drink bottled. I look at bottled water as partly one of the villains, but I don't look at people that use bottled water as a villain. I look at them as a prospective conversion. And the way that we convert them is not by just saying, oh, hey, you're terrible for doing this, because they're doing it because they don't like or they don't trust their tap water. The way that we convert them is provide them something better that they prefer, that's fun to do, that's cool to do, that tastes better, and then they'll do it. And that's just basic consumer behavior 101, which is you can't just, slap somebody's hand or smack them every time they're doing something that is like wrong or is bad or is not good for the environment. You got to give them a better alternative. Otherwise, behaviors won't change. And so that's the entire focus of a FloWater refill station, is effectively summarized by uncycling. Uncycling is preventing single-use plastics from even having to be used in the first place by providing water at the source that they can use with a refillable container. So pretty long answer to both those, but that's the macro on both the company as well as the refill station itself.
No, that's perfect. Exactly what I was looking for. Just to give people an idea of what was like in the EVO hall, if they weren't there themselves. There were multiple stations, I assume, hooked right up to the tap of the Mandalay Bay, getting their tap water or their public water, I guess you would call it, and using this purification process You just stick your bottle underneath, press the button, and out comes this tap water. So walk me through how the partnership with EVO came about. Were you working with the Mandalay Bay? Were you in Las Vegas already and you had heard about it? How did you guys find out about EVO, and when did those talks really start?
Well, I believe I was not firsthand of those talks, but I believe they started about 6 to 9 months ago, and we were working with the event producer, and
Okay.
I believe, and it was someone that was, is the event producer of EVO, really forward thinking, and it actually, I believe, as I understood, it culminated out of two things. One is a desire to be more environmentally conscious, to do something that is not just good for the environment, but also that the attendees would love and they would get amped on and get excited about. And it's one of those things where you kind of start the podcast exactly the way most people enter this conversation about water, because people typically think, well, water is water. But then when you actually make it exciting and good for the environment and something that, is kind of magic, it ends up being a lot more than just water, so to speak.
Right.
And then the second piece of it is, as I understand the conversations, and I've gotten this all secondhand, but as I understand some of the conversations with EVO, one of the things that was market feedback in any event that anyone goes to where there's single-use plastic water bottles that are available, at the end of it, more than ever before, but progressively, a lot of the attendees, gripe about things in plastic. They either, if you're doing something in a hotel or a resort, oftentimes the charges for a single-use bottle of water or any single-use packaging are absolutely exorbitant.
That is true.
And then at the end of the event, you just see barrels of plastic, spilling out. Or if you're at a music festival, you see plastic strewn over all the fields. And it's just so antithetical to, you look at someone like EVO and the attendee that goes to EVO, and they're younger, they're progressive, they care about the environment, they care about how we do things and the way that we do things that are for the greater good. And so there's a level of enthusiasm that was adopted, and I think the event producer and the whole team at EVO is really progressive to look at, well, how do we actually do something and one-up it and do something that's better than single-use plastic water bottles, which is historically what most events have done in the past that are also all starting to very rapidly move away from.
Sure. Now, have you? I know we had spoken that neither of us had actually attended EVO, so I didn't get to see them in action, and you weren't there. But have you spoken to the gentleman that was there? Was there?
I have. Yeah, I could give you a little summary of what it was
yes.
like.
How was the feedback? Exactly what I was looking for.
So I think headline on it is the EVO organization and all of the attendees just in that one weekend saved about 20,000 single-use plastic water bottles in the environment. So 20,000. Now think about this too. Let me contextualize it. To make one bottle of water, it actually required, if you were to just look at and dimensionalize everything based on one bottle,
sure,
about 1/3 of that bottle is comprised of oil. You need about 1/3 of that bottle in the form of oil and petroleum just to go through the process of making it, which is everything from making the plastic to, the costs and the oil that's required to run machinery, to fill that bottle, to transporting it across the United States. And so if you just, take 20,000 divided by 3 roughly, it's almost 7,000 bottles of oil, for example, that have been saved. And then you turn that into CO2 emissions and you can break it down from there. That's just one weekend. It's an amazing accomplishment that I think EVO, as well as all the attendees, should feel really good about. We had 45 FloWater refill stations, about 3 different banks of 13 each throughout the event. There's 10,000 attendees that were there. And then, it's really cool. You got people that are all gaming, and then they're getting to the final stage for, or the stage for final competition. And you've got people that are like quickly hydrating between matches. And it's one of those things where you don't think of hydrating as often as we should, about performance, mental acuity, reaction time, responsiveness, alertness. But if you look at the effects of chronic dehydration, 70% of Americans are chronically dehydrated. If you look at the effects of being chronically dehydrated or over caffeinated, I understand probably particularly in these competitions, some caffeine is useful.
A bit.
Maybe
You could say a bit. Yeah, definitely.
maybe a necessity, but then there's the boomerang effect, which is like over caffeinated is not necessarily a good thing. Over sugared is not a good thing because it creates jitters and whatnot. And so there's a lot of data about mental acuity, alertness, focus, attention, and being properly hydrated. And so it was cool for us to have a very small part in not only doing something great for the environment, but also doing something great for the attendees, where, hopefully we help play some part in them, small part in them being at the best of their game.
That's interesting. I wonder if I'll have to reach out and see if I can talk to any of the competitors who might have used your machines and if they felt they did better, or maybe some of the winners, if they were hydrating. I hadn't thought of that angle. That is interesting, but it makes perfect sense. I am probably one of those 70% who are A, chronically dehydrated, and B, over caffeinated as I drink my coffee as we talk to each other. So, so I completely understand. And when I am focused on drinking water and I'm making sure that I'm doing it, there are definitely more improvements in my overall performance and everything from my writing to my work, all that. So it makes perfect sense to me. So has this opened the door, whether it's if your interest in or any potential talks with other esports organizations or other companies that run these events to maybe put your machines in there? I think of like Riot Games, who's about to bring their League of Legends World Championships to North America in 5 different locations: Mexico, New York, Mexico, Toronto, New York, and San Francisco. I think of Rainbow Six with Ubisoft. They're about to have a big major event in Berlin. So there are certainly plenty of opportunities to get this in front of more esports fans and competitors. Is that something you've thought about?
It is, and it's something that's underway right now. And so I think this is, one of the great things about doing a new type of event and a newer vertical to us, so to speak, or a newer category to us, is that it kind of opens up the floodgates, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And so,
it's a water pun. That's a water pun.
You would not believe how many water puns there are until you actually end up working in water. And it's like every sentence I almost have to like caveat myself that I'm not trying to bring out the dad jokes intentionally.
It's okay.
Who knew how many water puns there were until you start talking about it?
Hey, it's a good way to make a splash in a conversation.
Well, spoken like a true dad. We can exchange dad jokes for our archives later. I think if you look at how I would expect this to go for us over the following months and years, as it relates to esports, but then also, using a corollary or parallel, is we did our very first music festival. It was Outside Lands in 2013.
Okay.
Now we do just tons of music festivals, right? And it becomes one of those things where it's like kind of the tip of the spear, and you enter through one thing, and then suddenly people are like, wow, I had no idea water could be so transformative to an experience at an event. And it's not uncommon that we end up talking to the event organizers or the production managers after an event, and they end up saying to us how blown away they are, or blown out of the water, if we're going to.
Hey.
Yes. Yeah. We need like a bell that we can ring every time.
Like a counter that keeps going up every time.
Yeah. How blown out of the water they are, that something as simple as water could generate the level of positive feedback that they heard from the event. And so, fitness is a huge, we do CrossFit Games every year, and there's a variety of other fitness events, PGA events, golfing events, America's Cup events, music festivals. And then I think e-gaming is so fantastic because of the people. What I love about that community is they're so passionate. They have a commitment to stewardship in the environment. It's kind of just built into I think to some degree the genetics of where they are in the demographics, and also where they live, but where they are in the demographics and the things that they care about. And it's a really tight community. I mean, it's a tight community that can change meaningful outcomes. And that's, at the end of the day, how we put an end to single-use plastic water bottles. I mean, it ends up being people that are in esports that are seen as progressive and trendsetters and cool, and they're doing something that they're passionate about. And then kind of this leads to the second part of your question of like, does this end up being a kind of a gate opener for us? we also see a lot of people come out of these events saying, hey, why don't I have this at my kid's school or my school?
Sure.
Or like this should be in every hotel that I go to, because I don't want to be drinking a bottle or refilling my vessel out of a bathroom sink in a hotel room. That's a
Right.
terrible experience, and the water tastes crappy. And they end up saying, why isn't this everywhere? And so that ends up drawing us into hotels, schools, gyms, corporations, other commercial business verticals. Because the way that we solve it is not just us, but we're obviously the leader in this, but there's other options as well. So I don't want to make it sound like we're the only ones trying to work on this solution to the plastic crisis and big bottled water. But the way that it works is we've got to be able to provide people access to something that they like and they prefer better than what they're currently getting wherever consumers work, rest, and play. And that's ultimately the objective of FloWater and BlueWater, our newly merged entity.
Yeah, I'm thinking even in the gaming vertical, like you mentioned, this was the first like esports event that you've done. At least it sounds like it. But you could also put these in general conventions like the PAX Penny Arcade Expo that happens in Boston and Seattle. You could put it in esports like facilities, like the teams that have their own facilities in California and Texas and wherever. You could partner with them. There is definitely a lot of ways to branch off. So I fully expect to see, as you said, one music festival turned into multiple. I fully expect to see FloWater in future conventions that I go to in the future, especially if they're saving 20,000 bottles worth of water in a single weekend. That's impressive. Can't argue with that. Can't argue with those numbers.
Well, kudos to EVO and all the attendees who just quickly adopted it. And we just provided a delivery vehicle via the FloWater refill stations. They did all the work in terms of eliminating single-use plastic water bottles and by hydrating themselves. So, lots of props and lots of love to the people that were the attendees there, as well as the event organizers and the entire EVO organization.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate your time. Rich Razgaitis here, the CEO of FloWater. That water you drank at EVO is from his company, and I hope that we see them again very soon here in the gaming space. Rich, thank you so much for your time.
Jason, thanks for having me. Great to see you.
Coming up after the break, we talk about EVO 22 in full, the announcements, the tournaments, everything from a full weekend of fighting games. Stick around. Welcome back to Cheesesteaks and Controllers, episode 108. Fantastic interviews to begin this show, both from Sonja Stills and from Rick Razgaitis. Great stuff all around. I really wish I could have had some of that water at EVO this year. But it sounds like it was a very big success. 20,000 plastic bottles of water worth drank between the attendees throughout the 3 days. That's a pretty big environmental impact, and I hope to see those machines more as gaming conventions and esports tournaments return to fruition. But let's talk about that EVO 22 in full. Fantastic weekend of fighting games with multiple tournaments and announcements and some of the best action you will ever see right there on display for you. The 9 games that were featured, each one had an incredible competition. Skullgirls, Mortal Kombat 11, King of Fighters 15, Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, Melty Blood Type Lumina, Dragon Ball Fighter Z, Tekken 7, Guilty Gear Strive, and Street Fighter 5. A ton of stuff to love in every one of those. Some of the most intense action I've ever seen. But first, I want to get into the announcements of EVO 2022. The big things that were announced that are coming to fighting games across the genre. I hope you like the words crossplay and rollback, because we're going to be saying both of those a lot. Start with Arcade 1-Up. Friends of the show have had Arcade 1-Up on the show multiple times. Announced their next fighting game machine coming to homes later this year. Marvel vs. Capcom 2. The all-time classic Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is coming to the Arcade 1-Up catalog with a 8-game package all in one machine. So it's Marvel vs. Capcom 2, the original Marvel vs. Capcom, Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel Superheroes, X-Men Children of the Atom, X-Men Mutant Apocalypse, and Marvel Superheroes in War of the Gems. That's a lot of Marvel Capcom action. At first, I'm very excited to see Marvel vs. Capcom 2 be freed, for lack of a better term, from the 13-year purgatory it was in. Now, remember, we have not seen Marvel vs. Capcom 2 since it was released for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 in 2009. So it is nice to see it back. I hope that this means it will come back in a console format of some kind. It is well worth it. In fact, those 8 games right there would make a great Marvel vs. Capcom collection for consoles, not unlike the Capcom Fighting Collection, if you ask me. But we'll see. We'll see. I have a feeling that they're going to gauge the demand of the arcade machines into how popular Marvel vs. Capcom actually is. I'm hoping that this is the first step into a new Marvel vs. Capcom game, but trust me when I say I'm not holding my breath on that. But Marvel vs. Capcom 2 arcade one-up machine, very, very cool. One of the first announcements of the weekend, actually. It was a noon Friday Eastern time that news broke. Very, very cool. So next we're going to talk about rollback netcode, a huge theme of the weekend. A ton of games either announcing that rollback netcode was dropping that day, in the case of Persona 4 Arena Ultimax, or that rollback netcode was coming in a future update, which was the case with the 2019 Samurai Showdown, and the biggest name on this list, Dragon Ball FighterZ. Now, for those that don't know or hear rollback netcode and wonder what that is, so fighting games, ever since the original Xbox, have used what's called delay-based netcode, where it gets the they call it ping, the amount of milliseconds it takes for data to go from the server to your console. They average the two out, and they delay inputs based on like the average of the delay there. Well, that's a problem in fighting games where things have to be ultra precise in order for a match to flow the way it should. An indie, like way back when, GGPO developed what was called rollback netcode, a different type of fighting game netcode that made things much more precise, made things feel like you were sitting next to the person or playing in a person in the arcade, as opposed to this delay-based netcode. And it has taken this long, including a pandemic, for companies to finally get around to including it. King of Fighters 15 already has it. Street Fighter 6 is getting it. Guilty Gear Strive has it. And now games are starting to add it after the fact. Multiverses has it as well. Do want to put that out there. So Persona 4 Arena, that update has already dropped for PS4 and Steam. So if you have P4A Ultimax, you now can play rollback netcode there. If you have Samurai Showdown 2019, or if you have Dragon Ball FighterZ, they are coming. But with Dragon Ball FighterZ, there is a slight catch. It is only coming to the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and X versions of the game, which are not out yet, which tells me that those versions will launch with rollback netcode. But it will be coming to PC. So if you already own it on PC, you're going to get rollback there. If you're a console player, you have to upgrade. Sounds like there will be smart delivery and the PS upgrade system involved. Whether that means an extra cost, I don't know. But rollback is coming to the PS5, Xbox Series X and S versions of Dragon Ball FighterZ, which is really, really cool. As far as new characters revealed for multiple games, that happened a lot. The first one, Marie coming to Skullgirls. Marie, for those who are not familiar with Skullgirls, and if you've been playing fighting games for 10 years, I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been out for 10 years, one of the longest tenured fighting games that there is. Marie was the final boss of Skullgirls. From the beginning. From the beginning until now, she has been unplayable. However, she is the final DLC character of Skullgirls. They announced that this weekend. That she will finally be playable. She will finally be available to the masses after they've had to fight her for 10 years now. She will follow Black Dahlia, who is next, and she will also be the final DLC characters, not only in the Season Pass or Second Encore, but for Skullgirls in general. I'm not sure if I said it that way. But yeah, so Marie coming to Skullgirls, that's very, very cool. DLC characters for King of Fighters 15 were also announced. Not only the final team of the first Season Pass, which is Team Samurai, Haomaru, Nakaruru, and Darlie Dagger coming from Samurai Showdown. Fantastic little crossover there. But also the first 2 characters of Season 2, which are Shingo Yabuki and the long playable Kim Kafwan. Not sure what took them so long to bring him out. But he is finally coming back in Season 2. We didn't see anything like teams or anything for Season 2 yet. We just saw 2 concept drawings of Shingo and Kim. Team Samurai, however, they will launch later this year. And again, Nakaru, Hawamaru, and Darlie Dagger, fantastic team there, especially with the brand new Samurai Showdown character, Darlie Dagger. Love that. That was a really cool thing to see there as well. And then Street Fighter 6 got their next 2 characters revealed in Kimberly, who mixes the Bushin Ryu sort of karate style of characters like Guy from Final Fight and Street Fighter 4 with this like urban sort of kick. So she uses, instead of smoke bombs, she uses spray paint cans. It's just really, really cool looking. One of the coolest characters Street Fighter may have ever had. Just so cool. And the moves that she was doing looked very, very awesome. And then Jory returning from Super Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter 5 Season 2, I believe. My main character when she launched, actually, so it's nice to see her back. Going to learn her in SF6 and kick some butt, hopefully. But yeah, excited to see both of them. Great trailers, really showing off the improvements that Street Fighter 6 has made over 5, particularly, if I may make the mention, in facial expressions. Very, very expressive characters in these trailers. Yuri, in particular, or Jory, I think it's Jory, in particular. But the 2 of them, awesome. Great additions there as well. And then finally, Bridget. I think I said finally for Street Fighter 5. That's not right. Bridget also added the Guilty Gear Strive. Bridget has not been around since the PS2 era of Guilty Gear, so great to see her back using her yo-yos and her teddy bears as weapons. And honestly, she's a Guilty Gear character through and through. Very cool to see. Not only is she here and already added to the game, she launched on August 8th, or 7th, excuse me, but she is the first of Season 2, so Season 2 is well underway. There will be 1 more character this year and 2 in 2023. So as announced, as the Season Pass was announced, not sure if they'll add to that or if they'll do what King of Fighters 15 did, where they had 4 teams, but they also did a free update with Omega Rugal, or Rugal. But yes, so those are the new characters coming to different fighting games. And then, finally, the 2 biggest announcements, in my opinion, are the teases for new games. One we expected and one we did not. So, Bandai Namco did tease something new for Tekken 7, for Tekken, at the end of the Tekken 7 trailer once that tournament ended. They showed that there's a new patch coming August 17th with more balance adjustments. Unfortunately, rollback netcode was not announced for Tekken 7. That's the only big downer of the weekend, if you ask me. But then at the end of the trailer, they showed the classic ending from Tekken 1, where Kazuya takes his father Heihachi and throws him off the cliff, and then turns to the camera and smiles. It's a big meme in the Tekken community. But as he starts to smile, the screen glitches, and we have a very much updated looking Kazuya. One of the most realistic depictions of Kazuya we've ever seen, with just the words, "Get ready." That is a tease for the next Tekken project. So, new Tekken, after 7 years, if you count when Tekken 7 now launched in arcades in Japan, 5 years if you count its console launch in 2017. The next Tekken is being made. The next Tekken is underway. I hope rollback netcode is in consideration there. But yes, next Tekken is coming. The next Tekken's on the way, and that's very exciting. Tekken is great, not only to watch, but to play. I will eat Tekken 8 up. I'm so excited to see what Bandai Namco has in store for us. I'm not really sure how they can improve on Tekken 7. I mean, Tekken 7, to me, feels like perfect Tekken. So I'm sure they have ideas, and I'm sure that when that game comes out, they'll feel like they've always been there, because that's what Tekken seems to do. But yeah, very excited for that. Very excited for more Tekken. But finally, my favorite announcement of the whole weekend is one that came completely out of left field, and it came from SNK. So SNK shows a big old trailer at the end of the King of Fighters 15 tournament on Sunday. It shows the KOF 15 DLC trailer. It shows the Samurai Showdown rollback trailer. But then we start to see familiar visions of Southtown, the city from Fatal Fury and Garrow, and we're thinking to ourselves, what's going on here? What are they talking about? Wolves are back on the prowl. What is this? And it was announced that a new Garrow, or Fatal Fury, depending on where you're from, is being made. It is 22 years in the making, I believe. Garrow Mark of the Wolves came out for arcades in 1999, so 23 years, excuse me, is when that first launched. And then we're getting a new Garrow, a new Fatal Fury in the year of our Lord, probably 2024. That is unbelievable. I wonder how much of that can be thanked or can be equated to the Team Garrow that was in King of Fighters 15. If that DLC was successful, it may have tipped off SNK that, hey, maybe a new game might not be a bad idea too. Or they're just going to go and make new versions of all their old fighting games. So maybe we'll get a new Last Blade. Maybe they'll get really into the back catalog and give us a new Waku Waku 7 or something like that. But this is the first step. A new Garrow, Garrow 2, Fatal Fury 4, unless you count Garrow as Fatal Fury 4, so it'll be Fatal Fury 5. Awesome game. Rock Howard in the picture there. Very, very cool. So SNK is back. They were gone for a while, and then they slowly came back with King of Fighters 13 and 14, and then Samurai Showdown, and then 15. They back now with all the partnerships that they're doing. They just put Terry Bogard and Mai Shiranui in Fall Guys for God's sake. I think Terry's going to be coming to Fortnite at some point as well once the Dragon Ball Z thing is over. It's a good time to be an SNK fan. Heck, it's a good time to be a fighting game fan. What a weekend of announcements that was. King of Fighters 15 is also getting crossplay, which is huge. So you'll be able to fight with anybody on any console on the rollback. But yeah, it's a good time to be a fighting game fan. And if you have a chance, go back and watch some of those tournaments, some of those matches. The finals of Guilty Gear Strive are mandatory viewing. That match was absolutely nuts. And the whole top 8 of Street Fighter V, from the first matches on Sunday all the way to the grand finals, is must-see competition. IDOM from New York, an American player, did this country well, going through a who's who of professional Street Fighter players, from the legendary Daigo Uemura to the 2017, I want to say, EVO champ, and 2018 runner-up Takedo, before getting stopped at the very end in a nail-biter. It was 2 matches to 2 matches. They had reset the bracket, so it was like the final match, final round, 1 hit away or 2 hits away from the championship. It went right down to the wire. But yes, if you want to see what competitive Street Fighter is all about, you check that out, because it was amazing. If you want to see domination, check out the Tekken 7 top 8. Nee from South Korea just came in and ran roughshod, reminded everybody who he was. The King of Fighters 15 competition was awesome. The Mortal Kombat 11 competition was great. Dragon Ball Fighter Z, the French player named Wawa, which as a Philly guy can appreciate that. Some of the most insane, precise gameplay I've ever seen in any fighting game. That guy has a complete mastery of Dragon Ball Fighters, and now he's about to wreak havoc online once the rollback hits. Just outstanding stuff throughout the entire weekend, and I can't wait for EVO 2023. I'm going to be there, hopefully. I'm going to drink that water. I'm going to watch those fighters. I'm going to talk to some people, and we're going to have a good time. But that's your EVO 2022 recap. Lots to look forward to in the world of fighting games. I hope that you are as excited about that as I am. But now that we're done the roundup, that means we are at the end of episode number 108 of the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast, presented by Fox PHL The Gambler, 102.5 FM, 1480 AM, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts. And as I say every single week, if you are hearing these words, it means you made it to the end of the show, and I am forever grateful that you did. The fact that you would spend some time with me just to listen to me talk to you about video games means a lot to me, and I hope that you were entertained, educated, or both. I want to send a great thank you to Sonja Stills and Rich Razgaitis, the commissioner of the MEAC and the CEO of FloWater, for some great conversations about esports and the scene itself. Look forward to seeing what both of those have to do, both in MEAC Esports and seeing some FloWater machines at future esports and video games events. FloWater and E3, let's make it happen so we can all be hydrated while we learn about the games. But until next time, I hope you have a fantastic weekend. I hope you have an even better week right behind it. And I will be back again with all of the latest video game and esports news next week. Until then, thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.